Hello vinyl community, this is Tommy in North Carolina, and I wanted to make a quick video as sort of a follow-up to the Black Friday video. A lot of you guys posted and commented on my video, and I saw some of you actually went out and bought for the special releases this Black Friday release, the Turtle 66. And so since a lot of people they seem to enjoy commenting and discussing some of my overview videos, the Monkees, Michael Nesmith, you can go back and look at those. I decided to do one on one of my favorite 60s bands, the Turtles, and it kind of follows up on this. This was a mono reissue lost album from the Turtles from 1966, which was a great year for them. You know, in terms of hits and sort of getting them introduced to American audiences. The Turtles were an American band formed in 1965 in Los Angeles. They started out as a surf rock group called the Crossfires. And featured this guy right here, Mr. Mark Volman. And I believe Mark played saxophone. Correct me if I'm wrong, comment below. But they were quickly signed to White Whale Records and sort of reinvented themselves as a folk rock group. Now, folk rock was a genre I think a lot of people credit to the Byrds for inventing. They basically took folk songs, particularly Bob Dylan. They applied sort of a beat to it, a rock beat, and thus became folk rock. Now, they originally were the Turtles with a Y, a further nod to the Byrds with a Y, and sort of the whole misspelling of animal names, but they eventually became the Turtles. And so their first big hit, also following in the mold of the Byrds, was "It Ain't Me, Babe," the Bob Dylan song. They did a folk rock version of that, and it kind of put them on the charts and brought them up in 1965, in the summer of '65. This is the Rhino reissue of this album. These Rhino reissues can be kind of a mix, but they sound really good, and you can usually get them pretty affordable. My problem with original Turtles White Whale records are most of them that I see are in really, really bad shape. I do have a few originals, and I'll show them to you as I go through. But this was their debut album, and as you can tell from the track listing, like a Rolling Stone, Love Minus Zero, Eve of Destruction, they were kind of very much following into that folk rock vein. The back covers of these Rhino reissues were kind of interesting. That's a small version of the original back cover. But, you know, if you put this album, you're a big fan of the Byrds and that sound, this album really definitely falls right into that. And one of the things that makes the Turtles so interesting to me and makes me such a big fan is I'm a big fan of Howard Kalin's voice, lead singer. I think he just has a wonderful lead singer voice, and so when he sings a song, it just elevates the entire thing. Now, they quickly got away from the whole folk rock thing, and so that's what's kind of interesting. They went from surf rock to folk rock. They were really a chameleon type band, and went forward with their sort of probably next biggest hit, which was "You Baby." And so this album definitely falls into straight up sort of pop rock. You know, they kind of were abandoning some of the social commentary and things like that. There's a little bit of that down in Suburbia. Songs like House of Pain, which was written by Howard Kalin. There's still some Sloan songs on here, including the title track, P.F. Sloan. But good stuff. I mean, this is "You Baby's" just one of the catchiest 2 minutes you can ever spend. The vocals are fantastic. Just a nice falsetto, high vocal, kind of in the vein of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. A good beat, fantastic melody. So, you know, these kinds of things are what really has given the Turtles a bit of a legacy that's carried on. And so "You Baby" was just another big hit, and so they were really kind of on a roll at this point. Well, Gary Bonner and Alan Gordon wrote a song in 1967, brought it to the Turtles, was arranged by producer and arranger Chip Douglas, and this particular song went on to basically Michael Nesmith poached Chip Douglas from the Turtles to work with the Monkees and did the album like Headquarters, which was produced by Chip Douglas. But it was their biggest hit and probably the best known song from the Turtles. It was "Happy Together," and this album is probably one of their best known in terms of hits. It has "She'd Rather Be with Me," "Happy Together," "The Guide for the Married Man." Just a few songs that a lot of people know and were kind of major hits. Again, the back cover, sort of a smaller version. This is the Rhino repressing. But "Happy Together" is the song that the Turtles are most known for. And of course, anybody that's heard that song knows it's a fun pop song with a great vocal arrangement and just everything about it. The lyrics are fun. And it's just been enduring. And so this kind of brought the Turtles, just brought them up another level into superstardom. And this is by 1967. And so still doing sort of singles and things like that. The next release that came out, and this kind of goes into the record store day thing, is the White Whale released, and this is actually a White Whale version. You can see the White Whale label. Golden Hits, which was, like I said, this was kind of a cashing in on the whole fame of Happy Together and those songs. And of course, Record Store Day, a couple of years ago, they re-released this on a nice colored edition on a gold vinyl on the Flo Eddie label, which is kind of similar to the White Whale label. And this is the mono edition of that. And so the Turtles were really on a roll at this point. For a couple of years, they've been steadily rising in the chart, just releasing a lot of hits and just being consistent. They definitely weren't one-hit wonders. And so they really were, like a lot of groups in the late 60s and staying alive. They released this album, Battle of the Bands, which was a concept album. And the idea behind this album is that each track, 11 tracks, I believe, this is also a White Whale. The 11 tracks were, basically, they were different groups. And this album came in a nice gatefold. And the idea was that, there were 11 bands sort of battling for a competition or whatever. And so the concept really goes not really far beyond that. The title track, Battle of the Bands, was written by the great Harry Nilsson. And so it's a good, catchy song. This album featured another huge hit, though, Eleanor, which is an absolutely beautiful song written by Howard Kaylan there. And according to what Howard Kaylan said, it was kind of a joke song. The Happy Together was such a big hit and was written kind of on a lark by Bonner and Gordon. And so the record label, White Whale, kind of came to him and said, we want more of that kind of stuff. And so Howard Kaylan went off and wrote this song. He's like, we're happy together. The chords went down. His song went up and all that. And he wrote these sort of silly lyrics like, you're my pride and joy, etc. And he turned it in as sort of a leave me alone White Whale kind of nod or whatever. And it ended up being a huge hit. They loved it. So that just goes to show that sometimes the songwriters don't really understand their audiences, because it is a great song. But Eleanor is on here, as well as just fun songs like Too Much Heartsick Feeling and Surfer Dan, which kind of goes back to the Crossfires. And I do believe they actually, the surf rock version of the group actually is called the Crossfires. It's sort of a nod to their original surf rock incarnation. Now also you can find out there, this is the same album, this is the Rhino Edition. I don't know why Rhino felt the need to just totally change the cover on this album. Perhaps they weren't a big fan of the original covers. Maybe it was a licensing deal, I don't know. But when Rhino reissued this, they put out, and it's definitely more 80s looking if you ask me, but this is the Rhino edition of that. And so a lot of people love Battle of the Bands. It's probably considered the best Turtles album. And that may be true. It's definitely artistically, it's a step above everything they were doing. But the next one is also a really fantastic album. This is called Turtle Soup. And only acknowledgement of that is right there in light letters on the front cover. Turtle Soup. This is also a White Whale. And this album, again, a gatefold. This album was mostly notable because it was produced by Ray Davies of the Kinks. And I think the story was Village Green had just come out. They were big fans of it. So they brought Ray Davies to come in. I think they paid him an obscene amount of money to do this. And so I think when it comes to ambitious recordings, I think this is probably the most ambitious the Turtles ever got. But it did work because it makes for a really good listening. It has songs like House on the Hill and She Always Leaves Me Laughing. But also, I think notably on this album, it flows together really well. You Don't Have to Walk in the Rain, Somewhere Friday Night. All of those songs are really just wonderful songs. They're well produced. It's just a good, solid rock album. That was in 1969. And of course, they followed that up. This is just for the fun of it. This is the changed album cover as released by Rhino Records. And Rhino actually, I think this album is a mix of mono and stereo. So I think it's an interesting sort of thing. Of course, Rhino, when they put it out, they put the produced by Ray Davies in very large letters. That pretty much was the end of the Turtles. They were fighting a lot with the record label. They released this More Golden Hits by that period. And just another note on the Golden Hits LP, the original one that I showed you back here. It also features a song, I failed to mention this, so I'm going to go back, a song called Outside Chance by Warren Zevon. So the Turtles also brought Warren Zevon into music a little bit with recording one of his early songs. So more Golden Hits had stuff like Eleanor's, the stuff that came out after Happy Together. And this was a Record Store Day release. It's not mono, it is stereo, but it was just sort of a continuation of the original. And Rhino, and of course later on they did this sort of a rarities collection called Wooden Head. And Wooden Head featured quite a bit of stuff that ended up on that Turtle 66 Lost album. And so they've kind of reinvented the history. But Wooden Head was a post sort of album that came out after they broke up. And as you tell, it's pretty generic, the cover and everything. But this is the original version of Turtle 66, so to speak. And so the next thing out was another Turtles album that I got is this deluxe 2-record Turtles Greatest Hits. There's a lot of Turtles Greatest Hits out there. So just pick one if you're just only interested in it. This is on the Sire label. And so if you're just interested in nothing but the hits, any of those collections will do. Well, Howard Kalin and Mark Volman, after the Turtles split up, they were picked up by none other than Frank Zappa. You can go back and watch my Zappa video for more information on that. And I believe because of contract issues, they had to change their names to the Fluorescent Leech and Eddie, which was later shortened to Flo and Eddie. And they were with Zappa until Zappa had a terrible accident and was kind of off the road for a couple of years and didn't have any reason to have Mark and Howard on board. And so eventually Mark and Howard kind of launched into their own solo career. This is actually called the Fluorescent Leech and Eddie. And these albums are really, you'll find that if you listen to these, they're really good albums. They're good, just solid pop rock kind of albums, good songs, interesting arrangements. I mean, nothing on these albums are going to blow your mind, but if you're a fan of that late period Turtles stuff, particularly an album like Turtle Soup, I think you'll find that you like these albums. Of course, Flo and Eddie kind of became known for being sort of personalities in the LA area. They hosted a radio show called Flo and Eddie by the Fireside that came on LA radio, and were just kind of known as personalities. They recorded for Columbia. Here's another album. It's just called Flo and Eddie. Still the same as before. Just more stuff. Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening. And so you can obviously tell anybody that's going to put that on their album cover is going to be pretty good sense of humor. Also, I have this one, Moving Targets, Flo and Eddie. And by this point, this is in the later 70s. They're kind of moving beyond the whole Zappa thing, but you can tell they've learned a lot from their time with Zappa and so on and so forth. Now, Flo and Eddie, interesting enough, and just as a side note, in the 80s, they were writing and doing music for the Care Bears and Strawberry Shortcake videos. My sister used to be a fan of that, so I was probably a fan of that music before I even realized who it was. But they're just fun little pop ditties that were in those cute songs is really all they were. But they've revived the Turtles thing. They still do oldies tours with guys like Mark Lindsay and groups like that. That's usually a summer package thing. I went a few years ago and saw them at one of the casinos, and Howard Kaylan still got a fantastic voice, and still doing the hits and doling them out and making audiences really, really happy. But that's my video on the Turtles and a rundown of their brief career from the late 60s into the 70s. If you have any comments or suggestions or anything like that, do that below. I'm at 200 subscribers, so thank you guys. That is really awesome. I had no idea when I started this thing just how deep we would go and how much I would cover. But I've been really, really glad making these videos, and I really appreciate you guys watching and the new friends that I've made thanks to the vinyl community. It really is fun. I've been watching a lot of videos for a number of years, and to finally just kind of get into it and start doing it has been really encouraging. Just everything I've been hearing from everybody. And it's awesome. I really do appreciate it. So if you have any suggestions for any videos, again, comment below. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's TommyBurton75. I usually show what I'm spinning on there. And I hope you enjoyed my Turtles video. You guys have a great week, and I'll see you again very, very soon.